Hello and welcome to the Bee Formless Methodology CEO podcast. Today, I won't say this morning because I'll just say today because today is your Friday, Kathryn, and today is my Saturday. So welcome to the show, Kathryn Schifferle.
Good to be here, Bee. Thanks for
Hey,
having me.
thank you. And I'm loving this world map around you, and who knows where you are exactly on the map behind me, but you are based in Northern California in a little. Well, I should say little, but an area called Chico, which I haven't heard of before, but I love that. And I also want to just comment on your earrings. Your earrings are fabulous, by the way. I'm all about the jewelry and the bling, and I do love them with all my various bits of
I like your rings. Oh,
thank you. As I just said before the
and
show.
your glasses.
Oh,
I
thank you
like
so
your glasses.
much. Thank you so much. But let's get on into it. And there must be a theme happening today because the roles and what we're creating, and you're the founder, and I want to emphasize this title because I absolutely love it. You're the Chief Vision Officer, not CEO, but the Chief Vision Officer. And vision is so important when it comes to being a founder and leading your own company. And so, founder and Chief Vision Officer of Work Truck Solutions, which is the commercial vehicle SaaS company that you launched back in 2012. And it was to help dealerships and is to help dealerships and fleets manage, market, and sell work trucks more effectively. Under your leadership, the company has also launched Convoy, which is a national marketplace for commercial vehicles. And drumroll, Kathryn was named one of the Automotive News 100 leading women in the North American auto industry just this year in 2025. So, big congratulations to you on that achievement, also, Kathryn. And pre-show, we were briefly talking about, women in you know, chief visions, founder roles in a very, highly dominated male industry. And then you said what industry isn't, and I was like, oh yeah, good point there. You know, but also when you answered my question when it came to coming on the show in terms of what is one unique insight in life, leadership, and or business, you said culture drives success and value. So I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'd love to hear how you came to start the company, what it's like to be a leader in an industry that you're in, and why culture drives success and value.
Well, let's start with the fact that I am what is called a serial entrepreneur.
Oh, love
And that is, a serial entrepreneur is somebody that can't help themselves from starting companies, right?
it.
It is a thing. I I'm also probably recognizably someone who isn't starting their first company. I've been around for a while, and I think I won't go into exactly how long, but I will tell you that my first company was based on really, really, really early technologies. So I love technology for what it can do for people. I,
Yeah.
I'm not a I'm not a nerd. I don't geek out on technology. I just like how practical it can be in making our lives better.
Yeah, I agree.
Secondly, I really am not a great consumer myself. I'm not somebody who gets all excited about consumer products and stuff. I am a business to business, a B2B person. I love, again, back to measuring value, because that's the difference between B2B and B2C. B2B, you have to prove actual value of what you're delivering.
Yeah.
And it means, having consultative conversations and learning about industries and learning about the businesses and then, making solutions. And so I love it. And I did spend a bunch of time in a previous industry. My last company was in the cable television industry, and talk about industries that are culturally not good, and weren't a good fit. But I didn't know any better. I just got up and did the work and tried to make sure that the technology we'd created was helping people and businesses, etc. When I left that industry, I then started teaching, and I taught at Chico State for a while. And there I did create business to business marketing course, and got to really dig in and focus on that. And then I was asked by a friend to help somebody start a very small group publication that was in the commercial vehicle space. And to this day, our company still publishes Ford Pros magazine, which is a magazine for people at dealerships that sell commercial vehicles to businesses.
Yeah, right.
So that was very exciting. And I was doing it while I was teaching, and I found out a big problem. And I had fallen in love with this industry because it's hardworking, salt of the earth, backbone of our economy, doing the work, vocations and dump trucks and you know, fire trucks and all of these things that keep our society going. And I found out that in the in the automotive world, there's what's called a VIN, which stands for Vehicle Identification Number.
Yeah, when you get asked that, what's your VIN number? And I'm like, oh, I have to go and check it. I
Yeah,
always get stumped with, where is it? Where's the number?
it's a long number. You have
Yeah,
to go find it. I
yeah.
know, but it's given to every vehicle. But in the commercial vehicle space, that VIN is put on that vehicle when Ford or General Motors or Stellantis or somebody when they produce it, but it's not finished. It's just the front part. It's just the empty van. And then there's this whole process where it's what's called upfitted to complete that vehicle to be what it's needed to do the work, to be a dump truck or to be, those vehicles that have all the drawers on it or that have a crane or a lift or whatever. And I found out, and this was back in 2009 or 10, I found out that nobody was keeping track of what the vehicles became.
How did you find that out? Like what,
Now,
like where did you,
because I tried to go online. I was pretty early in everything, and I tried doing Boolean searches to find them, and it was like you couldn't find them. And then I had to peel everything. Had to peel the whole industry and look at the supply chain and figure out, well, heck, it's very fragmented how it
disconnected?
all happens, and nobody was keeping track. And so that became, I was like, man, I love I love the people. I love the idea. I had to go back to my husband and say, hey, sweetie, I think I want to start another company. Then he was like, oh, I like being retired. And I said, okay, but he goes, oh, I'll support you emotionally. And I said, okay, I promise I won't refinance the house and use our credit cards again, right? So I started Work Truck Solutions, and we installed our first application was to help a dealership actually show customers what they were looking for, searchable by what it was. So you could actually click a button and find a dump truck for the first time. And so it's just been an amazing journey for me because before I started the company, I said, okay, I've made so many mistakes, some of them
I'm glad you're bringing this
multiple
up
times.
because it's so good to share.
Yeah, it's like before I start a company, I really need to have a list of some things that I've learned, at least three. So I'm going to ask you to excuse one word here. I'm going to tell you rule number one is no assholes.
Yeah, no,
Is
don't
that
worry
okay
about
with that?
swearing. Yeah, I agree. No assholes, no assholes, no dickheads. Like it's a, yeah, that's the policy, right?
Yeah. Rule number two was even at the age that I was fooling myself about what delegation actually was. And I kind of finally realized it. And I realized that to delegate, you not only need to hire smart people, but you have to make sure that you are on the same page of what the goal is. And if you are, then let them do it their way.
I
And
love
that
that.
was something that it was really hard for me before to do. I was like, well, but do it this way. Well, that's not delegation, right?
It's really not.
And then the and then the third thing, and by the way, I wish I'd learned that earlier in my life. It would have helped a lot of things in my life. But the third one was that I wanted to build from scratch a culture because I did not do that well in my most previous company. I let things happen that were maybe traditionally okay, but when I just didn't like how people felt and how things worked and all of that. So I spent quite about, and it was good timing. It was right when Whole Foods came out and when Google
Yeah.
came out, and they all had new ways of building company structures,
Yeah.
right? From the hierarchical to different. And so I was able to identify what I felt was important, which is transparent, um, and supportive. A good idea can come from
Anywhere.
anywhere,
Oh God, I so believe in that. So believe
anywhere.
in that.
Appreciative, um, collaborative. And as time went by, I also identified that it was iterative, that the culture was willing to wake up in the morning and go, oh my God, we learned a bunch of stuff. We probably ought to improve what we've been doing. And that ended up being one of the real definers of who made sense to be in the company. Because there are people that are just happy to do what they do every day. That's fine. You know, they didn't fit very well. So it wasn't just no assholes. It was like also the people that may be nice, but maybe they just didn't fit.
Hmm.
So, and we work hard and we work hard. And so
And I
the
think
first
that's
5 years
okay.
was,
Sorry, Catherine. I think that's okay when
yeah,
they don't fit as well. Like it's okay. Like
yeah,
it's nothing against
yeah.
them necessarily or the
No,
business. It's not
no, in fact, we
personal.
want to help them. We want to
Yeah.
help them find a good place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I think that we quite
yeah.
often get, like I think we need to embrace more of that. It's okay. It's like a relationship, right? When you meet somebody or and then it just fizzles out. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. The chemistry's not there. It's the same when it comes to culture. Sorry. I just wanted to highlight that.
No,
I think it's a
I'm
really
glad
good
you're
one.
excited about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what it takes. I mean, it took me 5 years of reiterating the plan, like restating it. And when I saw behavior saying, no, that isn't exactly what we're talking about, right? And it took about 5 years in, I started seeing the team, the people that were there and that stayed and that liked it, kind of helping with that, like making sure that everything was being measured the same way and that the pace was the same and that, and it became really clear then people that didn't fit. It just naturally became clear.
Yeah.
And so, and then I would say at about 4 more years in it, that was where the iteration became clear that we were, because we're a software company, but also because it was important to us that we were building a big solution for an important industry. It was really, maybe not curing cancer, but it was important. And that we really wanted to do that. It was important for us to keep evolving and changing because we kept fixing things, learning things, doing new stuff, helping different groups. And so you had to keep on top of it. And so um, probably the other thing that is very interesting is in my previous companies, I'd either bootstrapped or always kept 51% of the company. And this time, partly because of my agreement with my husband, but also because I knew I really wanted to scale big. I decided to do a more traditional fundraising model, which, I think we're kind of like a perfect example. We did a seed round, we did an A, then we did a B, then we did a B1, and then we recently brought in a private equity group. So, and that is actually, between our B1 and then is when I changed from being the CEO, because I was the CEO for a long time, but I found someone that I actually had known for a long time. He's fabulous, that he could do the operational stuff that I just didn't really like that much. I mean, I worked hard at it, but it wasn't like I'm
Loved
excellent
it.
at it. I'm excellent at vision. I'm excellent at business development and connecting the dots, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm really lucky because I've got somebody I trust doing that while I can go and do the stuff I'm good at.
I love that. What a story. Wow, how fascinating. And so where is the business at right now? Because you started in 2012, in terms
Yep.
of what you're doing, then the revolution we're in, because I love the way you talked about everything and iterating as part of the culture and the values, etc. And it is about listening, being aware of your customer, iterating, ideating, like both inside and externally. So as part of the team within, but also from an external perspective with the clients that you
Mhm.
work with. Then now we're in this revolution with AI, and you were talking about tech right at the very start of the conversation. Where is the business at, and what's your view on where we're headed in terms of in business and also as leaders? Because we need more visionary, we need more of those, ecosystem connectors, if you like, because everything you're talking about, I was like thinking about myself when I go in and I find a problem, and then I start solution finding to, because I can't let it, it's not that I can't let it go, but it's like, how does this all interconnect together? And I think that's a
Yeah.
big part of the the disconnectedness we're seeing in so many different parts of business and in all aspects of, the world. Yeah,
Yeah.
is my question making sense? I guess I'm asking you a few
No, it
questions.
is.
Yeah.
I think it is. I mean, you started off by saying a little bit about being it is unusual to have a CEO slash now CVO female entrepreneur, in in the automotive industry is one industry that is, you know, um, health and banking and some of the other, consumer products. There's been more senior level women in those spaces. There's fewer in automotive. Cable was almost nobody, but
Yeah.
it was also a couple decades ago. But so I think when I think about that, I think about how, for the first time, maybe being a female was really beneficial to me because in this industry, it's not even just automotive, it's the it's like the truck part of automotive, right? And so very, very old school. I'll start with very old school. And so to come in and start talking to people about changing the way that they do things, bringing technology in, which was very scary for them initially. It's much better now, but all of that, I think it was easier for me as a female to talk with them because I wasn't threatening, and it was, I used that to help create vision of how the path they could go from one place to another without it being all on them and without having to measure anything together, because that's what happens. Men start talking in conversations, and there is no doubt that at some point they're comparing and measuring things, right? And I don't have to do that. And so it's taken a long time, but I've created, there's stakeholders in different parts of the industry, and I've created trust with each of them, which has allowed me to help connect them. And that's that being that connector and being the one that can say, I'm not trying to give anybody a advantage. I'm trying to overall improve and raise the bar for everybody. And I think that that's where we've gotten at this point in time with the company. I'm working with OEMs, that's like, the Ford and the General Motors and all that. I'm working with the dealers, I'm working with the upfitters, the people that do that, and I'm working with different folks in there. And they're seeing that by connecting here with here, it helps both of them, or all three of them, or
Mm.
maybe all five of them, including the different types of customers. And that was actually the point of launching Comvoy, which is COMVOY,
Yeah.
because I hadn't found a place where people could just go and search and learn. It was all about, trying to charge more money somewhere. And I believe that it's that you should get fair money for stuff that you do, but that shouldn't be your first worry. Your first worry should be about creating value. And if you create value for people, you're going to make money, period.
Yeah,
Don't worry
100%.
about it.
It's a good point. It is such a good point, especially in startup and, building a business and you're worrying about, like where the next, project's going to come in. And I think you're right. The more we stay attached to the commercial reality or, just attached to it, and less focusing on value, it just gets stunted. But when you focus on the value you're giving and what you're providing, like you say,
Yeah.
it will follow. It's going to follow. It has to follow because you're providing
Yeah.
value.
Well, and that's why I like B2B. I mean, I know you can provide value in the consumer world, but I'm just not attuned to that.
Mm.
I'm more attuned to, am I saving somebody time? Am I making it more efficient or more effective? And, kind of back to the question you had about technology, AI is definitely something that as a company and as a person I use. I think of it, I'm a very pragmatic person about tools. Like if a tool is going to help me and the price of it isn't ridiculous, and if it's not something that you have to be trained on every day, right? Because I'm of a maturity that it better work easy enough that if I don't use it for 2 days in a row, I don't have to start all over again. So, to me, AI is very helpful that way. I use a note taker in all my meetings now, and I use one that I specifically found that did a good job of organizing the notes for me, so that I had a practice. It's not just to keep it. And sometimes I go back and look at it, but it's to help me remember what I promised,
Yeah,
number one,
yeah,
and identify things that I need more memory around it, right? Because I still take handwritten notes because they help me think about stuff,
yeah,
right? Um, we're doing things with AI in our, development space that will help keep our speed of developing faster. We're doing things in our customer service space that help us be smarter for them. We're doing things, it's not a magic wand. It's a tool. And
it's an
and if you
intuitive
can
tool.
figure out, yeah, it's a tool that can help you do certain things faster or better. It is not a replacement for humans, and it's not a replacement for real, what I would call deep understanding of an environment and service. It may
Yeah,
get there. I don't know. I'm not gonna, you know, I don't fight technology because, I don't really have any control over it. It's going to go where it's going to go. And I'm going to use it in an appropriate and um, ethical fashion. Um, yeah. And, and pass along that benefit to our customers.
yeah, it's fascinating. I want to pivot to leadership and this control piece you just called out because we have such limited control over so many things, right? Like we think we've got all
Yep.
this control, but there's a secret out there that we have very little control as much as we want to hold on to for dear life. But I'd love to pick up on this chief vision officer as one, what warrants and what is the difference between a chief vision officer and a CEO. You called out the CEO as more around operations, etc.
Mhm.
The chief vision officer, tell us a little bit about that because it feels like for me, excuse me, that role from a vision perspective, the North Star, especially in the environment we're in right now, is critical more than ever. Because
Mhm.
we're living in this non-linear world. It's no longer we go from A to B, but the ability to have that vision and the way we get there, it doesn't, like it's not just going in a linear way anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I'd love to hear a bit about that. And then also in terms of from a leadership perspective, what you see as the key requirements for the future of leadership as we continue to move into the world we're moving into.
Well, with regards to vision, I think uh, people's minds work differently, obviously. that's why we have people that have different roles. And I don't know if you've ever read Strength Finders.
Oh, yeah. I
Um,
haven't read it, but I've heard
yeah,
about it. Yeah.
the taking the test is really fun
Yeah,
because
I
it's about
love
a
the
20
test.
thing, and it told me what are my top five things, and I was blown away. I mean, three or four of them, I'm like, yeah, that'll make sense. But you know what my number one is? Learning. And I'm like, oh my God, that's my favorite thing, of course. But to make it one of the strengths, right? To have it acknowledged that that was a strength and not just something that was cool, for me was a big helper for me to kind of move forward in my role in life. Because what I see is that one of my superpowers is to see how things can be connected.
Yes.
So I can see a very large multi-dimensional thing. And as long as I have enough information, I joke with my team that I'm like a whale, the way that how whales eat, right? They just open their mouths and just suck everything in around them. And to me, that's how I learn. I just am constantly asking questions, looking, reading, trying to see what's going on, because that feeds that ability to think very, very broadly. Because and it's not like I haven't had like a North Star. A North Star is I want to fix this whole industry that I love. But how do you do that? You have to know who the players are and what their challenges are, because you can't go to people and say, "Well, I know what you need to do to fix your problems," because even if I did, that doesn't mean they can actually do that. You know what I mean? It's like, sure, but you've got shareholders and you've got, promises and you've got timelines and you've got tariffs and you've got all these other things that are just constantly changing. And so to me, it's like an all moving three-dimensional map. So I like it. I like that embodied in it is the goal to help. And to me, I think that is the real wrap around it that makes it able to be accomplished, because it's a positive thing. It's not, I'm constantly trying to figure out who's going to get advantaged over who, or are we going to lose market share because we work with this. It's all about helping. And I think that's a really good, helping people, helping others, helping, anybody is a great place to live your life, quite frankly.
Yeah,
So I
and I
think
so
that helps.
yeah, I totally agree, and I so relate to the connector piece because it's like in the whale. Like my mum always says to me, "Eat an elephant." It just but not that you'd ever eat an elephant, but like it's big, and the bigger the complexity of the problem, the more I'm like, okay, like I'm on that solution finding hunt to understand
Mhm.
it. But there is that whole. And that's where my formless methodology came around about in terms of understanding, well, what's actually going on here? Like, and talking
Yep.
to all the various people, like learning, understanding, becoming aware, everything to be there, be able to go, all right, well, there's the disconnect. This isn't what's serving any longer. How do we then reimagine and
Yep.
recreate it or reshape it in a way that starts to
Mhm.
really interconnect everything together? And then how do you
Yep.
test and learn it? How do you continue to implement or iterate, like you say? It's a gift in a way to be able to have that ability, like from a visionary perspective, and in terms of what your role, because not everybody can do that. So, and that's why for
And you
me,
wouldn't want everybody doing that either, would you? I
no.
mean, you really wouldn't.
No, because you wouldn't get anything done. Like you wouldn't get all the work that needs to get done. And back to the
Yep.
operations, because I know even for myself, like I'm a visionary, but I can see how it can be implemented through. But the minute I get caught then in just doing and the operating, I get
Yep.
bored because there's no problem to
Mhm.
solve. It's just now, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
but you
Well, I
need
was
those
so
people.
fortunate because I got somebody that I trusted to do
Yeah.
that, because without having that, you're still tied to waking up in the morning and having to go, oh, somebody quit. Now what do we do? Or, something that was tangible that you had to do first before you could start thinking vision. And
Mm,
so that I'm very fortunate. I think um, your second question, which was more
leadership.
um,
Yeah, what
kind
do you
of
see
the
as, yeah, what do you see as I guess, what do you see as the gaps in leadership currently, and what do you see that is the opportunities? Maybe I'll ask it that way.
um, I think that leadership is, I believe the term is servant leader.
Yes.
And it's unfortunately not very popular. I went to a portfolio meeting from a venture capital group that was invested in us. And, once a year they have portfolio meetings and you go and it's kind of a little bit of a dog and pony. The first day they give you a bunch of ideas and stuff, and that's good. And then you meet with investors because they want investors to be more investors. And, so it's kind of an event. The first day, the last session was about leadership. And they talked about, um, they said, well, how do people decide who the leader is? And so the top two things are male and height, just so you know. That's how people react to deciding who the leader is, right? Number three is passion, right? And I'm like, I sat through this whole thing, and this, it's okay. I was the only woman in the room
Were you
of all the
infuriated, or were you
portfolio
just
companies.
sitting there listening?
I was one of the CEOs there,
Yeah. No, but I'm
and
saying,
there were all the,
yeah, sorry,
pardon?
what I was asking was, were you infuriated when you were talking about men and
Oh,
height? You're
no,
like,
I'm not. I don't get infuriated. This happens all the time. I mean,
yeah,
why waste the energy on it?
yeah,
No, what I did is I waited and, then they talked about, they talked about Apple and how leadership happened there and how, he left for a while and had some problems and then he came back and he changed it. I mean, they went through a whole bunch of stuff and at the very end he opened it to questions and I said, I'm just curious. I didn't hear you mention, you had styles of leaders, but I didn't hear you mention a servant leader. And he went, oh yeah, whatever. Not important. And the two people, I'm kind of a little bit of I like to hear about CEOs, because I'm not like after, singers or dancer, but CEOs, woo. And I've met two of them that were what I would call servant leaders, and impressed me more than anybody I'd ever met in my life, right? And I'm like, why wouldn't this be important to talk about? Because here's why. Here's why I feel um, that the culture that is created under servant leadership, meaning that the leader cares about
the people.
their customers and the people in the company more than anything else. I believe, and this is what someday I'll prove this, that you have a better run company, a more profitable company, and a more adaptable company. And I can't get, this is going to be when I'm done
Retire.
doing this project. That's what I'm going to prove because it drives me nuts
Yeah, it's
that
so
people
true.
don't actually acknowledge that.
It's yeah. I mean, I'm all about the leading for the people, and you've heard the term, being the last person to eat at the table. Yeah, I think it's Simon Sinek. I can't remember who it is, but it's so
Mhm.
you're leading, and when I think of people, I think about it as my customer, client, but also the team. And
Mhm.
for me, it's a mix in terms of that ability to be a servant leader and drive that culture from the inside out. But there's also then
Yeah,
the need to be, have that transformational lens as being that leader as well, so that you are constantly iterating and moving everything forward, but also the adaptability that you called out earlier. And I think there are three key things that are required that are all centered around this servant leadership. And it's funny that you called out the engagement and the happiness versus the commercial reality. It was I was just talking to somebody else. I just did a podcast before. We were having exactly this conversation at the end, and I'll show you this the chart afterwards. But um, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, he shows that, and it's from the 1980s. So he's the godfather of flow, and he shows that, personal income, this is about personal income, but I think there's a real opportunity to talk more about the business and the income of the business and how
Right.
it continues, but the flatlining of happiness and engagement. And it's just a fascinating graph. And it's back to what you're talking about now. Like there's there's a project there in
It's a
itself to prove.
driver. It's a driver. It's a
Yeah,
driver of success.
yeah,
I absolutely know that our company with our culture is 3 times more effective, 3 times more efficient than most companies, period. And it's, because of what we've built there. Not because we got the market better or right, or because our product is 3 times better or anything like that. It's because of how we behave and how we feel about, working together and showing up and serving our customers.
yeah. So I've got two last questions for you. You mentioned earlier you work hard, the team, your business works hard. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about that in terms of that and culture, right? Because we are in this, again, we're in this world where it's hustle, hustle, like busy, 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 busy more than ever. Burnout is prevalent everywhere. I believe that, from a performance perspective, you absolutely need the high performance, but there's also then the need to also, like a professional sport team, to be able to actively recover. Like when you perform on the ground, on the field, or whatever you're performing in from a sports perspective, you're not doing that 24/7. You're also having the time to be able to rest and recover. How do you ensure in your business and with your team that as part of working hard, there's also then the ability to recover, to actively recover, to be able to get back into then, the flow and the ideas that come when you have got less of a cognitive load and you're more present, if you like, and fresh. How do you guys do that with your team?
So I think it started with just the understanding that everybody's important. And once, somebody's important, then their health is important, their attitude is important, all of that. But then, in 2020, when we all became remote, which we are still remote, and by choice, we're still remote. Um, when we went remote for the first time, it became also about here's an opportunity now for everybody to have a really good customized family life. So if you want to work from, because we have people in California, but we have customers in on the East Coast. If you want to start your workday as a customer support person at 6 in the morning our time, take a 3 hour break and then come back because you got kids that are in school and you want to be able to drop them off and pick them up. Or if you're working and you want to take time to go take your dog for a walk, all of these things are part of how you get to construct your work balance, your work life balance. And so I think it's less about it's much more organic than what you're describing. It's much more individual and organic. But
Yeah,
it is because we trust everybody and because everybody understands what their responsibilities are and how they're being measured.
I
And
love
if
it.
they can do that, yeah.
Yeah, and I call it life work flow. Like I think balance is just so like, like it's like those balance, you know what I'm talking about here, but it's a flow, right? It's a life work flow as a customized individual. But then when you come together as a team, it works, it flows because everyone's intrinsically motivated, they're engaged, they've got their own customized way of doing things, but then there's a way that it all interconnects together, which comes back to the
Yep.
connecting piece. Last question, or
Yep.
it's not even a question. I am going to just keep this open, actually. I'm not even going to give you, what would be one piece of advice you would like to share in the conclusion of our show now?
I think the thing that I appreciate the most that I try to coach my teams on is um, understand that being transparent isn't a disadvantage. I mean, so if you're negotiating and you have to be you have to be tactful, but that's different than not being transparent about goals and the direction that you're going, right? And so that same transparency and collaboration that you have internally, you have to carry that through your life. And there's a lot of people that have little white lies or little things that they do to make their lives look better or sound better or protect people or all the different things that they may have for reasons for that. And I just think that it's very emotionally time wasting, and you have to then remember everything you said to everybody and all of that. And I just think that I would say be genuine,
I love
be
it.
very genuine.
Yeah. Kathryn, you've been an incredible inspiration from a woman with everything you've achieved, but also just that, that pragmatic, that practical, but yeah, just servant leadership and your vision. And yeah, I am truly inspired by women like you who are, making a real difference in this world. And we've got a long way to go to be equal with, the men, but we need the female and male energy flow, in business, in life and in leadership. It can't be one or the other. And I think that, what you're doing is incredible. So how do we find out more about you and how do we find out more about your business?
Well, I don't know how important it is to find out more about me, but I have a LinkedIn. I don't focus so much on uh, adding communication to outside of the industry that I'm in. Maybe I will start doing that because I am feeling more and more that people need to think um, think more about where they're heading and how the part we were talking about earlier, you control yourself. That's the only thing you really control, right?
100%.
You don't
Yeah.
have control.
No.
Yeah. So maybe I'll get into some of that. But worktrucksolutions.com, that's our company. We do, if you have anything to do with any kind of commercial vehicles anywhere, I'd love to hear from you. And if you're an entrepreneur and you would love to talk about anything, I'm happy to support that. Um, I do think that I have a joke about um, women in business. If you'd like to hear it, you may have to cancel it out.
Yeah, go for it. Tell us quickly. Tell us what the joke is.
Okay, so today, it's still, even though we've achieved so much, because I'm old enough to know, go watch an old movie. I'm old enough to know how much we've achieved, right? But it's still challenging in an environment. A woman has to really perform and deliver, two, three times what a man does to get the same kind of, accolades.
Agree.
Good thing it's so easy. You heard what I said?
Good thing it's so easy. I love it. Great joke. And do you know what, Catherine? I hope that you get some inspo out of this show today and that you do start sharing with everybody out there, whether it's, a little blog or just some thoughts, because you have so much to share with the world and especially women in business and who are aspiring to be the next generation of leadership, whether it's a CEO, a chief
Yep.
visionary officer.
And just do it. I mean, that's the other
Just do
thing I would
it.
say to specifically, just do it. I mean, just don't let all the things that they say. I mean, don't worry about being a woman. Don't worry about it. Just do what you want to
Yeah.
do.
So I'm looking forward to reading your blog or your book or whatever it comes about.
Okay,
And I want you to tell me when you do it, because I think
I
it would be
promise.
it would be a huge asset. So, Catherine, it's been wonderful chatting with you, and thank you so much. And have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.